He's almost looks unbeatable, left uppercut. Now his hands are down. Now he's defenseless. Right there. You know,
that left hand is just lethal.
Yeah. Now look at that. Yikes.
He sticks the landing. He sticks the KO.
Gervonta Tank Davis gets the job done against a game Frank Martin. What a fight and what a performance and what an ending, more importantly. Man, I know everyone will remember the ending.
You know, that left hand is just lethal.
Yeah. But I think out of credit to both fighters, but more importantly, Gervonta Tank Davis, it's very important to acknowledge the work that led up to the end result. The headlines will say that Gervonta Tank Davis, you know, stopped Frank Martin in round 8 in devastating fashion. It was an absolutely just hellacious. It was a crushing knockdown. You know, the setup in between it, leading up to the uppercut, which, you know, clearly rocked Frank Martin, and then, you know, the left hand that just finished the job. And, you know, Frank Martin, as he fell back, his head, you know, bounced off the canvas. Gervonta ran off into the corner, knowing that this fight was already done. Man, what an end to what was an actually very interesting and intriguing fight. Because, man, despite how it ended, it was actually a tough fight. And nothing should be taken away from, you know, this victory, because, you know, they're going to go on and say that, you know, Frank Martin, he wasn't really that guy. He was a B-level fighter. You know, in the first portion of that fight, you know, Frank Martin looked good.
It's not even so much as an exciting fight. A good combination lands for Martin.
You know, he was doing a lot of good things. He was using his athleticism. He was, you know, countering. He was touching Gervonta Tank Davis, but there are levels, you know, and when Tank says that he's been doing this since he was 7, you know, competing since he was 8, and, you know, and has gone on to, you know, achieve many great things in the sport, and still with a lot more to go in terms of where he can go and what he can accomplish in the sport, you know, his you know, this was a very impressive performance. I think this performance, more than, you know, any other, told me a lot about Tank Davis and where he's going and the level he's going to be at. This guy, his boxing, he's heavily underrated. His boxing IQ is heavily underrated. You know, his boxing ability is underrated. And I've said this before, and I've said this because, you know, he has this equalizer, which, you know, it will be that shiny sticker at the end of everything, which kind of will be the thing that will be played back, and all the fine details leading into, you know, his victory and how he came to get the victory, you know, will just kind of go under the radar. And that's just, you know, people have a very short attention span, a very sometime-ish memory, and, you know, it's a case of that fight. You only really have to look at, you know, Tank's face at the end of that fight to know that he was in a hard fight.
Martin covered up well.
He'll downplay it and obviously be like, yeah, he caught me, or this or that. You know, that's just a part of the game. But, you know, it was a tough fight, and Tank had to figure Frank Martin out. And the problem for Frank Martin was, you know, Gervonta Tank Davis. Frank Martin was in tremendous shape. You know, I don't think the weight drain or weight cut was an issue. You know, he looked in good shape. He stuck to what he's done. He's fought, you know, 135 countless times. Of course, at some point he's going to move up. But, you know, in this fight, he came game, he came correct, and he was doing all of the right things. He was forced to fight a fight that he didn't want to fight. And that's where it started to go wrong for him, because, you know, once Tank started getting into his rhythm, felt the power of Frank, realized the level of respect and caution that he would need, you know, when approaching what Tank Martin was offering. As soon as he was comfortable, he committed early to touching that body, you know, stealing oxygen. He's a very good body puncher. He delivers very good shots and effective shots to the body, and slowly steals that energy from Frank. And Frank's movement just kind of started to decline and decline, and before you know it, he was chilling on the ropes, in his own words. He was sitting on the ropes, and he didn't even really know how he got there. And Derek was instructing him that that's not where he needs to be. But fatigue was in full effect. The oxygen was stolen, the rounds were taken, he was in a defensive position, and he couldn't use his movement and his athleticism, which was his primary asset to win this fight. He needed to keep the range, he needed to keep the distance, he needed to be at the end of everything. Tank, pressure game, relentless, come forward, and Tank even said it, he has, a different approach for every fight, and he's got many different styles to win a fight. And that's why his IQ is highly underrated, because this guy, he knows how to adapt, he knows how to make adjustments, and it's high level adjustments, to opponents. And he's learned things along the way, and you see the fights that he's had along the way. He's picked up things along the way in the fights against Barrios, in the fights against Pitbull Cruz. There are things that he's developed and added, and he's only getting better, which is frightening. I think size will probably be the only factor that will limit how far Gervonta Tank Davis can go. But in terms of ability, this guy's ability is just outstanding. And what a performance from him. He stole the energy from Frank Martin, slowed him down, cornered him, and beat him up and put him away. And man, it was absolutely destructive. One of the most ferocious knockouts I've seen, and it's just similar. And guys of this caliber, guys of this craft, again, Tank, you need to think about where we're putting this guy in the, in the pound for pound lip rankings, because man, this guy he's on par. It's a very tough list to contend with, but if I think about it, definitely gonna have Usyk at number 1, then followed by Crawford and Inoue, 2 and 3. And then number 4, potentially Tank Davis slips into there. It's he might have to be number 4, because man, it's crazy. Even just mad, absolute mad. But yeah, he retains his WBA strap. I look forward to seeing what is next for him. Of course, the talks all flying in now. Who's next? Unification with Lomachenko, or Shakur Stevenson. Now, man, those are going to be 2 fantastic fights. Very difficult to predict. On one hand, where you have Lomachenko, wow, you're looking at this guy where he's gone from, the Devin Haney loss, which in his favor was not a disappointing loss, because he was on the up, continued that in fine form, went on to claim a title, and that lines up a nice potential unification prospect. But man, the only thing going against Lomachenko is age, but man, in terms of ability, that is, these guys, it will make for a very intriguing matchup, definitely. I think I would edge to Tank on that one, just because of the youth, just because of the way he's able to chop to the body. But man, Lomachenko, it's tough to bet against him, even at 35, 36 years of age. It's a tough one. It's a really tough one, but I would lean to Tank on that one to get the job done. Then you've got Shakur Stevenson, man. Tons of talk. All of the debates are going down now. Had a few conversations, and all of the talk about between Shakur, defensive genius, Tank, etc. It's a tough fight. It's a tough fight for both men. It's a tough fight because Tank will have to work hard to close Shakur down. Shakur, we know, works on the back foot, uses the defense. The thing about, if you look at Shakur's fight against Edmund De Los Santos, didn't want to engage, did not want to engage. The power was definitely a concern, and didn't want to get caught with anything unnecessary. I believe he said he was hurt during the fight, so we'll leave it at that in terms of where that performance sits. But Shakur is a defensive back foot fighter. He likes to throw the counters, but Tank, on the other hand, is he's fantastic at countering the counter. This guy sets up shots in tremendous fashion. You only really need to see how he was able to open up and split the guard of Frank Martin in that fight, before he was able to land that devastating uppercut and then finish him off with the backhand. And, Tank just, it will be a high level IQ matchup. But the one thing that you bank on for Tank is that he also has that equalizer, which is undisputed. So it will be an interesting fight. Shakur, again, I know I love Crawford, and I know Crawford backs Shakur and everything else, but you know, Shakur is yet to prove himself at that level. And in terms of, I don't know if that fight would be next for Shakur, but he would definitely need a fight before fighting Tank next to kind of really, you know, set the tone and set the momentum going into that fight, because to come off his last performance and jump in cold against the Tank that we've just seen, that Tank that potentially could be, you know, active again relatively soon, boy, you don't want to do that. But you know, it's interesting. It's very interesting. Like I would love to see it. Either one, I don't even mind either one, either or. Either the Lomachenko fight or the Shakur fight. But you know, backing Tank to win both of those, and I think just edging slightly, both going to be very closely contested matches. You know, I just don't think that Shakur Stevenson, I don't think he can win a points decision on the back foot against Gervonta Tank Davis. And then will he be able to stay away from Tank? That's the thing. You know, Frank Martin, he's a mover, not to the level of Shakur Stevenson, but however, you know, Tank, he has developed, you know, his ability to cut off the ring, you know, very, very well. You know, the space in that ring for Frank was just getting smaller and smaller. And then obviously every time they came into an exchange, he wasn't leaving without getting something to the body. And then ultimately that's what led to completely slow down his movement, his legs. He was cornered. So it would be very interesting to see, you know, how that plays out. And then for Tank, we know he can take a shot. He's taken shots. We don't know where Shakur sits in terms of taking a solid shot. So it'll be definitely very intriguing. Can't wait to see it. But yeah, man, stay tuned for that one.
The undefeated